So, okay, yeah, I would like to say everybody, good to see you all again, and there are also some new people here. Yeah. It's nice to be. And tomorrow we'll other people also there. So this time my visit topic is about emptiness. Yeah. So today, tomorrow, two session, we have different texts used. So I think that would be better. You get bigger picture. The topic is same emptiness, but explanation is different text. So today is Lama Tsongkhapa's text in 3 principal parts, the emptiness topic. And tomorrow morning topic is
Diamond Sutra.
What the Dojichupe Sik Kidirwa.
No. So tomorrow is Diamond, verse from the Diamond Sutra.
So it is very nice explanation there. And then afternoon is 4-point analysis, yeah, yes, which is also very good for that meditation on emptiness. So I will explain as much as simple way or clear, and you can also ask me question. Yeah. So what to just we go text. Okay. So here, so this text 3 principal path. Normal 3 principal path is renunciation and bodhicitta and emptiness. So here, this time we explain the emptiness here, Otusida sileta and Tanatu Tony called Chidan Chibudeshi Gerwa. This today, that they carry words and Inala and Tony talk with the Tampo Tony talk with the Goba.
Yes.
Tony talk with the Gobare. Tela Yelutopishara Medena, Yajun Chanchu, some Lacomche, Sibitsawa Chupaminibe, they should tend to be our best the Udwa. Iritadi, Tony, you talk about Yun sense and the time to you take a cover at the Yina Tadi. Now, bet to tell to the Mamboya to Tashin and Tadi, Tony Tashiti, Gombolu to Ki, Lutere or Tata Yubilus. I give a look what the Chidane call Tony called it. Tony Sendi, Tony Senata, Tame Senata, the number to the Mawashiki killing it in a Teshik of the Loyo restaurant.
Okay. So, as Geshe said, so tonight we are looking specifically at the emptiness verses in this text that deal with emptiness. And so the first point is why, or the purpose of meditating on the view. And so this is the verse: you may master renunciation and the wish, but unless you have the wisdom perceiving reality, you cannot cut the root of cyclic life. Make efforts to perceive interdependence. So one could say this is the reason or the purpose why one needs to realize emptiness. And there are 4 philosophical schools, tenet schools, and these verses are explained from the point of view of the consequentialists or the tradition of Nagarjuna. So whether one says emptiness or selflessness, all of the 4 schools, as tenet schools, assert these, but they will explain them differently.
다음에 시간에 돈이 세나다 왔다디 마토나 tana 연중 검 자주기 셈검 어떤데 가족 검바이네고 코르발레 토레 바다 코르에 탑선데 동아 소소랑 동알 파네와 동알 파네 코발레 토레 탑시데 타요 마레스 대선사 다 돈이 또 거에디 개침보레 다음에 또 거에디 개침보레스 다데 둘다 시계 디켈랭 그래와 시계 남배 둘다 마 시계 켈랭 그래 다디 다이나에 돈이 대셔 잡다데 다단다 로가 용거와 다디 데디 둘다 시계 켈랭 그래스.
Okay, so however much one meditates on the wish to be free, renunciation, and bodhicitta, the spirit of enlightenment, one does not realize selflessness or emptiness, then one cannot be liberated from cyclic existence. And being liberated from cyclic existence means abandoning suffering. So that without this, there is no method to abandon suffering and liberate oneself from cyclic existence. Therefore, emptiness or selflessness is very important. And this is asserted by all 4 of the Buddhist philosophical schools, but they do explain it differently in the different schools.
Tigi lesa aneti that pelatineta kigana chilos wadunga gyuma shiba yung dea tanda lesa etelele mikiba sabayna sunu kiare anile gewe leche sabayna yako timu danzi wangi leche gewe leche sabayna yako dendulu lekena ya dendulu teme kigana chilos wadunga gyuma shiba dea chuta same kele chire dea.
Okay, so all the 4 Buddhist philosophical schools assert that we continue to take birth within the cycle of cyclic existence and unceasingly. And the root cause of that is the obscured ignorance. And from that obscured ignorance arises attachment and aversion and other afflictive emotions. And then one accumulates karma, and depending on that, the sufferings of birth, sickness, aging, and death arise continuously. That in that accumulation of karma, if one accumulates non-virtuous karma, that leads to suffering, rebirth, and even through virtuous karma, under the influence of obscured ignorance, grasping itself, we take a happy rebirth. But then even in that happy rebirth, we experience the sufferings of birth, sickness, aging, and death. So all these points are asserted by all the Buddhist schools.
Timu danzi di rangi yula meba sobala, timu danzi ki yul di meba tambo cheba chine torwa to. Tine te ya gombala tene ane musum te to tando ya gombala tene ta ngosum to pe lo ke tene te ata de chana ne timu danse de rang ju la me ba so thoina ti wangi ta nyomo danse ki thangbe nyomo danse la tene cha tang lo so ba nyomo to ma ke ba chene le sa ba ma sa ya ta nga ma le sa sha ju yana tela ya nu ba tu che se ma ta ne ya ko ba le ke wa le sa la mo to do se ne o to ko ba le to ne ta chemata danse ko ra ki le me ba se ne ane arba top se ate dus
Yes.
so ta de o te tonda tere
Yes. So the purposes of this is that under the to eliminate from one's own continuum of mind the self-grasp, the obscured self-grasping, one must understand that the absence of the object and analyze that again and again. Then by meditating on that again and again, there comes to a point where one has a direct perception of that. And then one meditates further and gradually eliminates the obscured ignorance that grasps itself from one's own mind. And therefore, the associated afflictive emotions such as attachment and aversion cease to arise, so one does not accumulate new karma, and also previously accumulated karma is no longer kind of potentialized or activated. And in this way, one gradually becomes liberated from cyclic existence. And when self-grasping is completely eliminated from the mind, one attains liberation. So that is what is meant by that.
ta te chide ta tanda de deshe ke di kumbolo de lo se me to ta ju ta ge lo se me to ta de ro ta de shite sta ane tende to be thabla basic do
No.
tende to be thabla basic do gala chita ta ta ge lo la tende se di toni se di ke tonda chi cho chi gre do tonda chi ba ine tanda tende to be thabla basic tende se do gala tende la pe tende ra pa ane tende teletis chawachi ane tende thomas tende deshe kyaptan chi sum yor dinane tende rakpa dire tai tende rakpa ti karasana gyuki tende tende spa duje ge chu kare na gyole gyuda kel tende chumbare se dire wa kel tende chumbare es tesda ranshi ge tube tongbare se ate yongore tade chatanti telayan nenga chi yorwa tangwa ko tangbo tende ge namcha de kelendu wala 아니 체탈에 숨고요서 체탈에 숨베지도 다 지름버지게 디 단다디 베지티날 텐데토베 타올 베스도 양 데제 겹당페 내가 요버지 인스모를 남겨.
Yes. Okay, so this last line, make efforts to perceive interdependence or dependent arising. So there are three levels of it, dependent arising. That which is most coarse, then subtle, and most subtle. And this interdependence or dependent arising here is referring to the coarsest level of arising from causes and conditions. That whatever composite phenomena there is arises on the basis of causes and conditions, and is therefore empty of inherent existence. And this is a very important point. And by understanding dependent arising in this way, it protects one from nihilism. And so this is also a very important point why J. Rinpoche begins explaining in this way.
동발에 랑식 주베 동발에서 와라 야 고월 로바기네 때네 메발로 코드에 기티 내가 줘봐 어떻게 송배치도 때데 또 배탈을 배서 다대 규행에 때데 담보디 디베 디아버자 하고 버체서 걸와다 주제 주는 그때 결에 때네 중월에서 와라 코테 여바직 때네 메바직 많이 봐 코트에 줘봐 어떻게
So otherwise there is the risk that emptiness can be misunderstood, that when one hears that all phenomena are empty or lack inherent existence, you misunderstand and think this means they're completely non-existent. So there is that risk. So therefore, this advice to first put efforts to understand dependent arising as phenomena, all composite phenomena arising from causes and conditions. By understanding this well, it protects one from this misunderstanding of thinking that it means things are totally non-existent. And so that's why J. Rinpoche gives this advice first to protect from this. Yes.
간시 콜대 주는 tum치게 균레나 루와메 도시 미베테소 가인 시바 데네 산제 개벨람라 슈세도
Yes.
어때네 산제 개벨람라 슈다 그 가르서 월스나 딱 와 콜베 추스나면로 냥데 지르 타바톱스게 다 대추 되게 다디 되게 추 되게 디 사마 배 라는 기네테네 중앙에 봐 셀라테네 중앙에 봐디 샤샤바 찍체와 이제 대가라 안에 라몬드 다 단신 세네메도 라싱기 두버스벨로 세네메도 라몬드 두버스벨로 세 단신 되게 율데 사와니네 메바 라 사와니네 메바데 돈다니데 배 가로 메바드니 지도 치게 줘야지 하고 쓰나
Yes.
산제투 예보용에 남을 쇼바레 다 같이 돈이 도바레스 돈다 디토 디토니 레스 걸 산제기 추 돈이 써야 돼 추디 다음에 써야 돼 대셔야 돼 가르스나 두자 셈제 호와를 들베치도 송어로
Yes.
셈제 동을 get날 때 사와디 가르스나 난징 원게 코와코와로 와
Yes.
이원 코와코데 난징 되게 율 다음에 매바데 산제기 때 최소의 고파 또 찍대려 봐. 어때는 산제 다 통해 보인 걸 가고 용 거래. 남을 슈퍼레스토라 돈다들.
So this is the verse dealing with the reason why one meditates on emptiness. And then the next verse is explaining emptiness itself. I'll read the verse. A person has entered the path that pleases the Buddhas when for all objects in the cycle and beyond, they see that cause and effect never fail, and when for them they lose all solid appearance. So all phenomena, whether within cyclic existence or nirvana, or the methods to attain liberation, all these phenomena
제가 셀라 때문에 중앙에 봐. 야보지 샤샤와 직제. 셀라 때문에 중앙에 때문에 디가라 안에 난징기 율때 매바디 하고는 등입에 지기질라 가와다 마에 봐. 직도의 충수나 다 산지 남을 쇼바레스.
Okay, so that understanding well how one asserts the dependence of all phenomena, whether it is phenomena within cyclic existence or phenomena of nirvana, of the attainment of liberation. So understanding this well, and then in addition to understanding that, understanding how there is an absence of inherent existence, of it, existence from its own side, or absence of the grasping itself, when one understands the object of the absence of that object and sees that that is not contradictory to dependent arising, then one has understood emptiness and entered the path that pleases the Buddha, because the Buddha gave these teachings in order to liberate sentient beings from suffering, from cyclic existence. And so that when they understand these two things, the dependent arising and the absence of inherent existence as non-contradictory, then through that they are able to be liberated from cyclic existence and thus have entered the path that would please the Buddhists.
어때를 딱 한지 딱 가르치고 그랬으나 다시 공두시기 땡데세디 땡네 중화 땡데세나면도 땡중세나면도 디 안에 돈이 세나다 다음에 세디 때 돈다데 디레티 돈다 다가 디레서 디 돈다 찍바래와
Yes.
디 돈다 로로와시도 로로와샤시바나 따디 만디바레스 와라.
Yes. Okay, so to repeat as before, that when we say dependent arising, or that a dependent origination that arises in dependence on other, and selflessness and emptiness, the meaning of these is the same. And when we think of these as being different assertions, then that is mistaken.
어떤 데다 동바레스 라시게 주베 동바레 덴바 주베 동바레스 와라 셀라 때네 중화레스 돈다 데다
Yes.
어다 데다 데 직도드시나 데다 다들라 양 데시데스 아 때네 중화이다 텐데 임베 균세다 이게 공도시 타라파지 딩만 데시 겹거로 하고도
Yes. Okay, so if we would say it in the most brief form, when we say that things lack true existence, are empty, are lacking inherent existence, this means they arise in dependence on other. And then, so that's the kind of the brief statement of it. And then we get into explaining the coarser and subtle aspects of dependent arising and so forth.
어떻게 딱 이제 프란시게 주베 동바레스 와라 셀라 때네 중화레스 다 돈다 데르와
Yes.
셀라 때네 중화고 라시게 도요 말사 돈다 데도 어떻게
So that when we say that it is empty of inherent existence, this means it arises in dependence on others. That is the meaning. Or that it arises in dependence on other means that it is empty of inherent existence.
어떻게 다 텐데 인단텔라 추디게디 텐데 인단텔라 다 균세 와타라 망보여 와타라 숨유르스 게제시엔 바 어떻게 아디 베나 추 두제게 추디게데 라랑게 귤드 규다 켈레텔레 초인 파순사 아니 데바 마투바레 라시 마투바레 호타랑고네 마투바르스네 티타
Okay, so then how is dependent arising or interdependent? So there are the coarse and more subtle aspects. As we said before, there are three levels of explanation. For example, composite phenomena depend on their own causes and conditions. Thus, they lack true existence, they lack inherent existence. They are not existent from their own side. So that's one.
어떻게 따디 다때네 딜레 텐데 테스타와디 차실레 때네 중화세 들어와 그래도 지내고 두지게 줄어서 받아도 쇼가래 아랑게 차실레 때네 중화를 했어야 들어와 차실레 맞된 바요 말고 배나 누마지게 죄나다 두제다 아장찬데 누마지게 죄 얘나라 되게 대사마 아랑게 배 차실레 때문에 중화를 했어요. 답변을 수생이 최초지나 바나다 두제 수생이 최초지나 두텐 차슈 칸데잖아 텔라콜라 초게 차 요구를 해서 와 초게 차 매바이나 고 두텐 지기지기 난 주니 가 두텐 가서 사나에 전부 차에 매와 차도레스 고 초게 차 때인데 두텐 지가라 지기라샤 베네 초실레레 제 땡어에서는 고 초기차 요구를 했을 때면은 그 지난 주제 되는 가르서는 전부 차에 매고래 어도 스테이트 왔단 거래.
So then a more subtle level of dependent arising is that phenomena depend on their parts. So there is no composite phenomena which would not depend on its parts. And not only composite phenomena, but even non-composite phenomena depend on their parts. And if we consider phenomena, the material phenomena, even to its smallest particles or smallest atoms, they must have directional parts, because if they lack directional parts, then when you amass them together, they would just they couldn't amass to a larger phenomena without directional parts. They would just enter into one another, and a larger object would not form. So even the smallest atoms must have directional parts, so that you could have one in the center, above, below, in the four directions, and in that way, having those directional parts, then the larger phenomena forms. Without that process couldn't occur.
어떻게 따뜻해 갈라 셰바르타고 차시나 셰바데 졸라 촉 셰바데 졸라 안에 기치 차요 기치 차라 때네 중발에 중 샤고 지그랬으나 dana karma chuzu se tawada chuzu chik se tawada tenzula ta kechi mungu shawudwa oto se kechi ki chadu pa chache yor teme bayina yanko pe kyune tuzu de shama shiwa tawa chadurwa oda tende siyorta.
Okay, and then if we consider consciousness is made up of temporal parts. So it has there are moment by moment of mind, and thus it is constituted of temporal parts. Or similarly, time, we have an hour that is made up of minutes, and so those are momentary temporal parts.
Pero namkala sopato dola yako ya chacha yorisi orwa chala namkato dola chokcha kas chokcha chane shayerde chokcha matemba kyunu yo marisi ora taka shikandar chashela matembe chuchiga shayo maris tesuda tanda oma tagiboda achachante ti oma tukta oma sora ti tukta tanda rangyupa tenzo ke tesuda chutigeti temba tuyo marti temba martibe kyunsela ane chachere shasne chachere shas konzo kelenge ore wa chachere shas kelenge ore ina ya rangyupa oma banala rangyupa ta tagipa nyina ne rangyupa ge kena ya rangone tube tongpa rangshingi tube tongpa ti chache be kyunse ya shama shiba chagorwa.
Okay, so that similarly, space depends on its parts, because it has directional parts, and so there is no phenomena which does not depend on its parts. And this is not only asserted by the consequentialists of the middle way schools, but even the other schools, such as the autonomists, would say that phenomena lack true existence because they depend on their parts. However, there is a difference between the autonomists and the consequentialists, because they would say, although phenomena are not truly existent, they would say they exist from their own side.
Those chigre that the gane tende tamo gana khawale gorsana chu khareto ti tashu tende tashu ti chu khareto chena ko dashila tene le pha ta ba jana ma to chu khorangi yugi tene chu kharet ko ta den sene kyuni nye chime do se ora dati ta den sene nye chime do ko le pha ta ba same le pha dashila tene le pha ta ba same dati tende tashu ti te tanda di tanda pecha dinala tati lu tanda dila tanda tende tanga ane tanzingi yulu ti meba tongsuna sanje kebe lamla shupare se te ta tanda ngomya tisho.
And then the most subtle aspect of dependent arising is that what phenomena it is merely labeled by mind on its labeled basis. That in terms of the object of itself, in searching for the object, it is not findable. It is merely labeled by mind. And so this is the most subtle aspect of dependent arising. And so in terms of this text, when the line make effort, a person has entered the path that pleases the Buddhas when they have understood dependent arising and the absence of the I, the self that we grasp at.
또 세타티네 바티시아 마샴르 시카시도나 그런 디세 우차기르와 타탄다디 산지게 벨람라 슈퍼스 근데나메 로암메 통신스로 간제다 때네 중화대당 단징기 유울티 때네 메바니데 베 쿠니다 가와이케네 메바다 딩이 코이 당다테 집바에 바코서나다 산지게 벨람라 슈퍼스 또니 대세게하다 단다데 호데티레 디어와 간다 다티치 오마디 카르스나 तावे चेपा माजो पे छेरे
Los.
तो पेना तोनी द वच तो पाए ना या खोया को चेपा युस लो माजो के चे शेयरवा
Los.
पे चेपा जो मज सने या बा से वो हा को मा कोरवा
Los.
पे छसा हा को मा को से जरवा चेपा
Los.
ते चेपा माजो पे छे देला काशे तो धीरे 나왔던데 로는 받다 동바 캘렌터에 고바니 시세 소소 나왔듯어도 다돈 투베 공바 또 밤에서 오다 식스티쇼가 숨바데 때.
Okay. So as we go through these next verses, it will become clearer. So that when one sees that the absence of the object of one's grasping itself and the dependent arising phenomena are non-contradictory and have the same meaning, that understanding is entering the path that pleases the Buddha, as that verse has said. And then the next verse is kind of pointing out when one has not completed one's understanding of the view, when one doesn't clearly understand it or hasn't completed one's analysis of emptiness. And so this verse is, you've yet to realize the thought of the able as long as the two ideas seem to you disparate, the appearance of things infallible, interdependence and emptiness beyond taking any position.
어때다 나왔던데 로암에 받아 텐데스 티베 야 포치 샤시바 텐데게 고야 포치 레바치다 아란싱기 티베 동바세 티니 쿠니 도다치도 랩투고 내바이나 따탄다 따베 단다 단다 산지게 공바 다 따와시에 주로 따와디 된다고 반디다 단다 또요 말에서 도치와 차상마 또 말에서 Tati Kandesi was not up in a Nabe Tutamawa Nane, Chedamawa, Dodeba, Simsamba, Uma Balaya, Umaranjupa, that is okay. That 10 days ago, the Teshe kept on pet lawyer, Kunzo 10 days age, Sanjay choose 10 days to swear the Kunzo killing or the Yanaya 10 day call and on a pet manda or the Orva. But Chedamawa tan Dodeba, Simsamba, Tizusumgi, Arsigorsna. Chu digeti, Rangi Juda Kilatinachua, Tashella Tenachua in Bekunsinki, Ranshinki Drupare, Rangono Drupare, Demo Drupare, school to take Junsepe, but Tajube shared the pet called Doctor Language. At Hanashinki Penema, Rian, the Umavan, Ranjupaki at Tanda. Shella Tenachua caring or then United, Shella Tenachua the United Ranshinki, Mardobares Kundus Check or Shit Wamari. When the Mardobas Shit Wamari, Nemba Matovaris, Kondo, Washigi or Tatela Keeper. Kondo, to go Masum Cherama to the Basin of Sum Kishele, this Kovatis, Sabate Kondora, Yorva Hotel. You probably look like the Angela Sobat to the Hotel.
So that even if one understands well that the infallible nature of dependent arising, the appearance of things, infallible interdependence, dependent arising, and emptiness, which is the absence of inherent existence, but has not come to the point where you see these two things as having the same meaning, then you have not reached the intention of the Buddha or the understanding of the Buddha. So one has not completed one's view in terms of the Buddha's teaching. And how this arises, if we consider the Buddhist philosophical schools, the great expositionists, the sutrists, and mind only, and in the middle way, the autonomous schools, they all assert dependent arising, but they explain it in very different ways. So they assert what the Buddha taught in terms of dependent arising, but explain it differently. So that the first three schools of the great expositionists, the sutrists, and the mind only would say that phenomena arise from causes and conditions, thus they depend on other to arise, but at the same time they are truly existent from their own side, or inherently existent, which is completely the opposite to the explanation of the consequentialists. And then if we consider the autonomous school of the middle way, again, they assert that phenomena depend on other to arise, but they are not able to explain how phenomena lack inherent existence. So again, consequentialists explain it differently. And so the autonomous school does explain it in a more profound way than the first three schools of the great expositionist sutras and mind only. And the example of one holding the autonomous view is the master Legden.
Oh, there's that and that type of buggy. Karsigorsen, that Karate of Jimmy, Shella Tene Choy Bacon Sinti, or Ranching Matuba, Ranging Winner to your mare, or that temper to your mare, or Ranging Sing to Maroko, or that did Geshe, or that did Kumbulu to get Geshe, Ben Sawashera Canala Pay, Geshe Pay, that Sawashera to the Peja, Pay catching Bushes or that and that Telatine, the Teotam Boyer, that Teoso Chictanda. But then the water of a Comachupa said to the Machupa. Or that in Alape, Desheta, Chitan, Desheta, Keche, Chitango, Mandu Pepe, Ombakageta, Pecha, Lomnier Chesa, so Chita to the Lomnier or to Srita in Zonal, or that Soyoreta de Chu to get the Ranching to be Tomba and Basonzata. You the Kela Tenechumare, you Shella Tenechumare, Sama Chawachia on to Chikawachi, Tanya to you, but Tede. Go rushing to the Tomba, you can think it that Chumares. I don't speak.
So what the consequence of this assert is that because phenomena depend on other, thus they lack inherent existence. They are not existent from their own side. They are not truly existent. They do not exist by way of their own characteristics. And this is the explanations given by Nagarjuna, particularly in the text Root Wisdom, which is a very important text. And there are many commentaries on that text. And of those, one of the most important is Chandrakirti's text on Entry to the Middle Way. And in those who study, when we study the text, this is one of the principal commentaries that we study. So in brief, whatever the phenomena is, because they arise in dependence on others, they arise in dependence on parts from causes and conditions, and are able to perform a function and establish as a relative phenomena. All of this arises through the reason that they are empty of inherent existence.
Oda tusi tati tusire tati tanda ita deshe seleme to ta kanzu chiwa do tangi tangi china ma do gorwa des debu chayo to ta sanyene nyiri tati oma tsidi tabi chipa zobe tsere ta oma tsidi
Yes.
oma tsidi nawatine lungo nawatine lungo mi bata kono kile de chis tatundo ko namshi rejo mi pa chiche to sidwa namshi rejo mi pa chiche to tendre melo thwa samine Geshe yuge zinda kunjina tetse tawe cheba zo balas. Ta tawe ki cheba zoya di ta khande di kabla ta tawe cheba zo chagi ye kansa di la chiki ta yi tende tang ranshingi tupe tongpa nyi donda chikdo hako ni pe chu diki di te nesul nangsul khande yor chidan chu diki di nelu khande istido wala Ranshiki tupe tongpa yintang de samlo khordo wala di tela tene gyunsen shenpa samlo tamo koba Ranshiki tupe tongpa yinpa hako ba Ranshiki tupe tongpa yintang de samlo shitandu wala chupike tele chingwa yinpa samlo lamsangchi khoro yungudu na ta tawe chepa zopa res ta ale tangpo tishin tene ta pede chane sheye choro ta dinge pede chele shego.
Okay. So then the next verse deals with this shows how when one has completed the analysis of the view, one has completed an understanding. So how that arises is that when the person understands that dependent, arising, and empty of inherent existence are of the same meaning, one meaning. And how that is that when one thinks of the nature of how things appear, automatically one understands that this means they are empty of inherent existence. And when one thinks of the emptiness of inherent existence, that again automatically brings up an understanding that phenomena arise in dependence. And this shows that one has understood the view.
Tati tanda des sero tangi na dusre kedo norsan jazo sinata yanzi nyamata pepe lama tutup keba shiu chungurwa unta tsechi lujile sangi reso tene lujudri yor kongi deshe dese pesebo shiu songre kande sun tawe chipa zobe sedi aranzo meshe nashe tat meshe nashe jeshe lushe de wanshi tuku susu yul zingirwa yul susu pene mishe ke yul sudi towa samne ko sudi ko ranshin ki dripe tongba imba gyunsen shela matoba ranshin ki dripe tongba imba nye suna ta tawe cheba soparis pena manzo mi le dis kyunsho doge chige pa sana kola dawa tadu wala dawa nyi shargirwa dawa nyi shardu kola dawa ji nawa tsamgi ko dawa nyi meba ko ngeshe tenturwa na dawa nyi meba tangbo na hako deyorba yunse shela matoba dawa nyi nawa tsamgi dawa nyi meba de ko ngeshe tenturwa dina shin chi chungwa suna ta tabe chepa tsoba res wata chedo zo gyugen le tene chungwa yinba sene na hindu kala koran shingi tu tongba yinba meba tentu chedo zo ge Ranshiki tuve tongba yinpa samlo chik dospa nelu chik samutando gala shenla tene chungwa yinpa chik lamsa chik lola gyunse shenla matone lola chartu kudu na tatawe chepa zopare eso tatire.
Okay, so to make this clear, there is an example which Pedrick no Sangyatso gives that I think is very clear. He was a great master of Tibet, and it said that he attained Buddhahood in one body in one lifetime. And so his explanation that if we consider each of the 5 sense consciousnesses, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, taste consciousness, tangible consciousness, all of these have their individual objects. And when the sense consciousness apprehends its object, for example, the eyes seeing form, in merely seeing that form without requiring other reasoning, the person realizes that this is empty of inherent existence. And that understanding shows that one has gained certainty as regards the view. And he illustrates it with the example: if someone has kind of unclear vision, like faulty vision, and in a dark night looks up at the sky and because of the faults of the vision sees 2 moons, even in the time of those 2 moons appearing, that person knows there is no 2 moons. There is only 1 moon, because he knows from before that appearance that there is only 1 moon. And so without depending on any other reasoning, he knows that the 2 moons appearing is not so. And so similarly, in this way, we have understood the view when we see that appearance arise in dependence on cause and conditions, and without requiring any other reason, find certainty that this means they are empty of inherent existence. Or similarly, if we are thinking on emptiness of inherent existence, we understand this means that phenomena arise in dependence on other.
What was about the tende in Basamlo Cordola, situated at the Yunsela Mataba, Rashing to be Tomba in Banyaba Tantoaji. Rashingi, Rumaduki Pe Chituaji, Nansuchi, Samlo Cordola, and Rashing Maduba in Banyaba Tantuala, Akahakoduala, or that's it, the China Tenechoin by Kunsingi to Spa Chutation at Hakokutuna, Yabatangutanata, the Chepazo Savares, Tate. Teta Sangi Kebelam Shubareta, Casa Tela, Danzi Tachi Carsore, Danzi Tata, Tanumo to go one to Manduvachineta, Imo Wangele Sava Bansaya La Sopature, Larasasha Belela Suma Tabiatan, Nubatuchi the Mataya, or that Tinechineta Quadita, Alecaleti, to you to be loading more. I Gombalatineta, to you Muslim to Toneta.
Yes. So that having certainty that phenomena are dependent, arising, or interdependent, and from that understands that they are lacking, empty of inherent existence. So, and similarly, when thinking of the ways that of how phenomena are empty of inherent existence, that certainty in that leads one to the understanding how phenomena arise in dependence on other. And having that certainty means that one has generated certainty of the view and entered the path pleasing to the Buddhas. And through that understanding, as one gradually increases the power of that understanding by meditating again and again, one comes to the point of a direct perception. One is able to abandon grasping itself and the afflictive emotions that arise from it, and thus not accumulate new karma, and previously accumulate karma is not ripened, and through abandoning grasping itself, liberation is attained.
How to say that Matochi and so Tantanzo. The Nintendo Nesuda, Trashiki, Madube, Chudiki, Rashiki, Madube, Nesuda Hamakuna, and so Shadala Soba, Numu Kandeshkina, Diki, Shiden de Tibu Maripiki, Yaptori Chigorba.
Yes.
Penatoja, Nage, Tatola Sopata, Shidala Spatula, Ajanja. 어떻게 돼 기도가라 최대다대 율대딩 때 라신기 두바도 장군의 두바도 지금 알아서 나네 나와나 신진신에 되다 녀모도 수신부 계획을 열었다디 다들 선배 세리배 단다데 군대에 숨도 군대에 뭐 겨울 뭐지 뭐 쉬었던 당아마 다 세리바티 민대 예 제마서 가마가 세리 지금 아주 셀라 콘도 사두가라 컨셉에 콘도 사두가라 셀라 콘도 사두가라 아주 배 개차 구치 공아 로그 도탄에 파초디 미디베 코라랑기 교회 반나고 나자 먼저로 도탄에 소샤게 도서 어때 대선 세리베 콘서트인데 냠십시에 하고 도시도
Yes.
남배당 예만에 다시 와로 다시 모이고
So that when we do not understand dependent arising and that lack of inherent existence, then we give rise to attachment and aversion and so forth, because these minds are supported by obscured ignorance. So that in these afflictive emotions such as desire, jealousy, hatred, and so forth, the objects appear to us as inherently existent, as if they exist from their own side, and then we grasp at them as existing in the way that they appear. And His Holiness, in discussion with scientists, I don't remember their name, but previously these discussions have occurred, and the scientists also say in these times that when you become angry with someone else, that 90% of one's anger is exaggerated. One's view on that person is a kind of being completely wrong.
Yeah.
And, is that is an exaggeration within one's own mind, or overlaid on the object.
어디서도 대수도 뭐 안에 아리아 대화계 슝 엄마 시켜봤어야 되나를 배 엄마 시켜봤더니 텐데 샤다데 시켜봐요 하자다 텐데 대야보 마티올라 때 너무 참하게 계약이 시디 랑을 랑싱 두바 랑을 두발 심벨로 되게 지기도 대수다 텐데게 남샤디 때 대시 샤다 계약이 있으면 어두스 마시게 나라 또 소여로 또 마시게 되 베타 다이코를 단 개체지를 되어 와 어두스.
And so in a text by Arya David called the 400 Verses, he focused all on the explanation of dependent arising. But he said that if one did not understand dependent arising well, then the basis of afflictive emotions, which is grasping at things as being inherently existent or existing from their own side, is always present. Therefore, he would focus on the explanations of dependent arising.
근데 배 가르쳐 그러네. 룰라레 원치신도 팀목을 내줘 대서로. 그러나 류세데 루완세데 룰라 루완 캡되어 봐.
Yes.
저상게 팀모스기데 너무 참말 캡되셔서 너무 참하게 쉽게 돼. 이모도 자콘동하게 타돌아서 봤다. 되게 참하게 시사대 팀목이 지도 세상 팀모데에 안에 때매봐서데 텐데데 대셔데
Okay. So the example he gives to illustrate is the way our sense of touch or tangible pervades the whole body. In that same way, all afflictive emotions are like pervaded or supported by the obscured ignorance that grasps at others as being inherently existent or existing from their own side, and therefore to eliminate that fundamental obscured ignorance. Therefore, he said it's important to understand dependent arising.
Otu study tere te ina nga zo tawe kor da tonyi kor to de deshe je to la tanga zo namjo shira ki nyen to spa ko to sine pe ko tes yaro yongoro ina ye pe shita ke chik su su sembe dingne ta de ota tonyi ke tunda tende si di ta tende insare samne lo pe ta tesum na ne tesum tunjur ke tesum kesuna ota di pe 시작에 소남 첨부했으나 소남 매바이나 소남 중국줄라 보다 된데서 게 말했어. 어떻게 뭐시게 되는 소남 중국줄라 대점상에 사매교스 대점 쇠바 삼제니 세바 로고 제거교스 된데 동결이 대점다 된데게 저 돈이게 된 된데세디 된데 제사에서는 동결이 대점배 로 야베 줘라 된데게 된 고야 뭐지 고아티스 알서 고야 무슨 다 고아 레게 줘라 되게 줘라 하고 했나 되게 씨바 후보지 씨바 후보지는 코르바티 베 사브레스 소시르스 고아 사브레스 라 아주 돌아다고 치로라 님만 보샤시는 잡았다 님만 봐제 아 이상 보는 돌아되고 레디 페토에 메버 소시르 봐
Rela.
시다 다 요보다 또 예도 다 고발레 트레네다 고발레 트레게다 다녀볼래고 다 돈다 된대죠.
So that in terms of we listen to these teachings on the view and the explanations on emptiness, and by listening then we develop an understanding, and that if kind of in one's mind one comes to the point of thinking, yes, that is probably so, probably things are lacking in inherent existence. It's referred to having a doubt that tends towards the meaning, that is tending towards having a kind of a thought, a conviction and emptiness. That even that doubt is to one who has that doubt has great merit, and this was also said in the 400 verses, that someone with little merit wouldn't even have a doubt about emptiness. So even to have a doubt tending towards the meaning, thinking that things are probably empty, is a great merit. And then further than that, having that doubt about dependent arising and emptiness, it is said that by that understanding which leans towards kind of a good direction, this will perish or shake the root of cyclic existence. So that when we think of perishing, if you think of a cloth that we leave outside so it gets rained on and the sun falls on it, then gradually the cloth gets thinner and thinner and holey and becomes completely useless. So that doubt will in this way perish the root of cyclic existence, and one will come to understand emptiness and attain liberation from cyclic existence. Yes. Okay, so let's come to the final verse.
남실에 좀 같이 된데 밀루통 예시 대서 제가 줘발라스 시야 나외 여타세 바단 세도
Yes.
시야 나외 여타세 바단 동배 메타스시 동반이 교다 제부차베 최시나 단세답에 초반미 요르시도
Yes.
단세답에 초반미 요르세요 따디디 따디 타규바기 따디 콘도시야 어떤 돈조라 대다 집어다 오지래 타규바기 갈수 없으나 Tende seatiki Asia Shan Nawe Yotasa Nawa Tenjung Singro Nawa Tenjung
Yes.
Nawa Tenjung Digital Tutamawa Shen Rangipa Menchi Gita Simtamalo Sobata Rangipa Zo Rangipa Retanda Tenzoki Chu Digiti Nawa Tenjung Shella Tene Chumares Lugala Ko Tarsore Tene me ba mai ba kodorwa
No.
tene me ba mai ba kodorwa ta tagyu bagi de kejo karsana chu dege de shela tene chuware esne ba ji samlo to kodogala 안에 란싱기 두바 많이 봐. 봐.
Yes.
여타 란싱기 두베 동바태야. 여타 데세 도레스. quoi 도레스. 안에 동베 메타세도 알아. 얘는 란싱기 두베 다 타바디 란싱기 두베 동바레스도 알아. 두다 오마 쪽에 어다 란싱기 두베 동바레스도 알아. 그 여타 세도라 란싱기 두베 세도라. 다 타주바게 란싱기 두베 동바레스도 알아. 그 때는 벌써 동배 메타
Meta.
어떤 메타데스 도레스 또
Yes.
메타데스네 그 단위도 이봐다 셀 때문에 중요해요 골고야 때문에 고아질래 도레스 어떤 때는 계셔
Okay.
다 등이 깨서나 다 등이 하고서나 안에 단지 따위 줘보면 줄었으나 안 딱딱해 재단이가 longo 말했어 그러와
Yes. Yes.
그래서 재단 longo 말했어도 최대게 로다야 마한타네 라시기 두버simbe 로티 왕도 도마레 야메나 체타 로네 라시게 라고네 마도바라 라시기 마도스도 때네메 발로 코네 오다 체타라에 롱고 마레 오다 티파라키데 오메타와 또도레세
Yes. So then the next verse is, as it says in the text, the unique features, the specific characteristics of the consequentialists or the Prasangika Madhyamika. The verse, in addition, the appearance prevents the existence extreme, emptiness that of non-existence. And if you see how emptiness shows in cause and effect, you will never be stolen off by extreme views. So as before, the consequentialists assert dependent arising and lack of inherent existence. And in terms of appearance and that phenomena arise in dependence on others, that the other schools, in particular the autonomous, would say that the appearance of phenomena that they arise in dependence shows that they are not truly existent, that they are not non-existent. But the consequentialists specific characteristics say that when one sees that phenomena arise in dependence on others and understand this means they lack inherent existence, one understands that they are not permanent, they are not what they call eternalism, that one ceases the eternalist view. And then the consequentialists would say that that emptiness, understanding emptiness eliminates nihilism, because through understanding lack of inherent existence, you understand that that phenomena arise in dependence on others, whereas the other schools saying understanding emptiness eliminates eternalism. So the main point between these is that this last line, you'll never be stolen off by extreme views if you understand how dependent arising eliminates eternalism and emptiness eliminates nihilism. You will never fall to the extremes of an eternalism where you exaggerate the qualities of phenomena such that they seem inherently existent, or nihilism where you misunderstand and think that lacking inherent existence or lacking existence from its own side means that phenomena are completely non-existent. And so that understanding means that you have you understand the view of the middle way that protects you from those two extremes. Yes.
Brotaya mountain,
Yes.
Brotaya mountain, Brotas to call it Mepachilla Yoba Drota shower, Barba.
No.
Protaya Manshane, the Tata Lumsare.
Yes.
You take it there, ranching it to be Tombares to Galaya, the Mepala Cosma,
Yes.
Zeta Lumsova,
Yes.
Alonso. That Tagipe card, Tanda de Carsana, arranging Mena Yang, Tanya to your say, Tatitiri, Kimatir Umelam, Cetera. Should they get the Ranshi, Ranshi to Medo. Menaya, or Tanya to yours, Tanya to Yona, Yoko Chobarwa.
Yes.
Tanya to what they have Cosanatati, Sanjigita, Gomba Tartu, Tatiresta, Gombolo to get Treshika, Tony, Treshi, Sanje Korangi, Yangele, David, Solushi, Galambana, and a Gelong Luto singing Chingore, near Tawata to the Tesha, which is the Gombolo Chineta. That's how I share a suba song senata de Teshika data, Tontaning Boda did.
Yes. Okay. So that when we grasp a phenomena as inherently existent, we have fallen into the view of eternalism, that we have a kind of exaggerated the characteristics of phenomena, and exaggerate means that we grasp it in a way that it does not exist. And then if one misunderstands the emptiness of inherent existence and thinks that this means things are non-existent, then you have fallen into nihilism. And so the consequences say that phenomena lack inherent existence. With this, they have relative existence. They are both lacking an inherent existence and have a relative existence. And if one understands these two, the lack of inherent existence and the relative existence, then one has understood the final thought of the Buddha, which is that which Nagarjuna explained. And the Buddha himself predicted the coming of Nagarjuna, that 400 years after he had passed away, a Gelong Nagarjuna would appear and explain the view that I have taught. And so Nagarjuna appeared and composed the commentaries, in particular Root Wisdom.
Oda to Silatadi Achita Tony Kora Desha Japtanchi Tatandanga. And the Tayanchiman Sani Maniga, the Tony Korshirwa,
Yes.
Desha Jero, that it is. All those two started that Chiva, you know, Chiva Testa, and the cards. I think I further. I'm not going to explain. If you have any questions, we will discuss a little bit. And then, so tomorrow whole day we talk more detail.
On emptiness.
Lost.
Lost.
Thank you, Celia.